With that came stress. With that came as well that Arnie suffered from two big career burnouts. And I didn't even know that was existing before, but she was diagnosed twice with stress-induced cancer and managed to go and fight that. She's now an international speaker. She's taken her passion to go and look that she's specializing in neuroscience and looking how her neuroscience background, marine scientist by trade, wanted to be a vet until she was 17 years old, is helping her to particularly address high profile and performing leaders. And tonight, initially when I introduced why we are here, why we are vets, why we are A-type personality, why we are hard on ourselves, is she is addressing exactly that paradox of holding your head up high and managing to go through it. Tonight, with her Brain Accent Magic, she's teaching us some arts. And the art she's teaching us is to go and live through all the expectations we're supposed to live on, but as well be leaders in our lives. So, welcome, Arnie.
Yay.
And
hi everyone. So can I all ask you, I hope you don't mind if taking off my shoes because I hate clomping around on these things. Can I ask you before we actually get started, just to turn off your brains, just for 2 minutes, and quickly cross your legs if you haven't already. Don't even think about it, just turn off your brains, cross your legs. Now look down, is your left leg over your right leg or your right leg over your left? Because it actually matters. If your left leg is over your right, then you are in the 74th percentile of the New Zealand population. You are more inclined to make decisions based on how others will feel. If, however, or you walk into a house, so you're more inclined to walk into a house looking to buy it and just stop and think, I can see my family actually really enjoying this house. If, however, your right leg is over your left, then you're more like me. Damn sexy, give yourselves a pat on the back. You're actually more inclined to make decisions based on facts and analytical thinking at this point. Whether you believe in the left or right brain personalities, there is some strength in the fact that the more that you focus in one area and one skill, that area of the brain does get strengthened. So you're more inclined to walk into a house looking to buy it, go straight up to the real estate agent and ask them what the rate of return would be if you were to flog it off in 3 months. Either way though, if you are at a networking event like this, wouldn't it be cool to know what kind of person you're about to sit next to? What kind of conversation will you have? All you need to do is look down at their legs. Not in a creepy way. But wouldn't it be cool before you actually sat at a networking event and you look down at somebody's legs, would you like to know whether you're going to have a conversation based on Donald Trump's political agenda or the state of his hair? The choice from this point forwards is now yours. You are so very welcome. Hello and welcome. I am Arnie Wilson and I am a recovering high performer and overachiever. But seriously, I'm somebody who actually needs to be very careful because my brain is physically primed for burnout. You see, at the age of 37, I was actually finally made to pay attention. I was sitting there one night while I was about to be given a diagnosis of stress-induced, aggressive, high-grade, hormone receptor positive breast cancer. It wasn't the diagnosis that shocked me that day. It actually even wasn't the fact that my oncologist told me that it was stress-induced. I mean, at the time, I was actually a program director of a $52 million portfolio. I was doing 74-hour weeks every single week. I knew what stress was. It was actually the answer to a question that my then partner asked that was going to change the direction of my life and is the reason why I stand here before you today. You sit on the floor. You see, my partner asked a fundamental question, one that we often actually don't want to ask. And he said this, Doc, what are the statistical chances of Arnie surviving this? And it was the answer to that question. And I am blessed to this day that my oncologist said these words. I will not, and I cannot tell you the statistical chances because the moment I do, your brain will fixate on that number and it will slow your recovery back to health. Boom. In that moment, I was transfixed. I was like, wait, what? Did my oncologist just tell me that I had some magical power in my brain that could speed up or slow down my healing rate? At that point in my life, I had never heard of anything like it. And that was 9 years ago. And I know the lefties in the room have already done the math. You can tell. And so I've been maniacal for the last 9 years to find out exactly what he meant by that. And I've found since then that the brain is actually extremely magical, and I'm on a mission in order to bring that power back to humanity again and make it so very simple for everybody else to be on that same train. Now, so I started off by training in absolutely every possible discipline. I started off going through the bypass technique, if I don't pay attention to it, it doesn't exist. Yeah, right. And that one lasted, not very long at all. And so I moved on to my neuroscience background and went back to cognitive behavioural training, which means that I reframed every thought that came into my mind. My partner only chooses to leave his towels on the ground, waiting for me to pick them up in his wake, because he has more important things to focus on for the greater good of the family. Yeah. So then I moved on to counting to 10. I'd heard that it works because the hippocampus, or the area of the brain that quietens our nerves needs time in order to process. But, of course, I'm a type A personality. Ask me to count to 10, 1, 10, done. What's next? Move on. Now, in our hyperkinetic world these days, you've got another thought that comes 2 seconds later that's going to slam you right in the middle of counting to 10, right? So then I became a mindfulness coach. I then became a meditation teacher. I went back and did Ayurvedic practitioning. I trained in every possible modality in order to really nail what it was about stress that was so prevalent in my life. Even became an executive life coach. Did I tell you I was a type A? All while still working a full-time job. Ooh. But what I found was, even though I found moments of joy and moments of zen, any time an external stressor came my way, I was instantly propelled back to feeling that level of anxiousness and nervousness again. And so obviously I hadn't nailed what it was that I was seeking. And so it wasn't until I went back to my neuroscience roots that I actually started stumbling across some answers. I started reaching out to global ambassadors across the world and some of the research facilities that I'm going to talk to you about tonight. And obviously, somewhere along the line, we've found the answer. And so I'm not here to actually tell you how to avoid stress. I'm not telling you to go and sit on a beach somewhere, because if I did, I'd quite possibly be sentencing you to an expedited trip down Burnout Highway. What I am here to do is to give you back the power and wonderment of how the brain works so that you can make some smart decisions. As a neurophysiologist, I will not be telling you to sit on that beach. Okay, and I'm not going to tell you to continue to meditate if that's not working for you. I'm not going to tell you to change your diet if that's not working for you. Alright? Every single brain in this area, in this room, is wired differently, depending on how you think and the years of experience behind you. Your brain physically forms, like a muscle, it physically forms and strengthens in certain areas, which means that no two stress management techniques are the same. So with that in mind, for those of you who are currently eating, would you mind please putting your ice cream on the ground for 2 seconds, uncrossing your legs and standing up. Sorry. Now make yourself, I know this is kind of like a really small room, so it's probably not going to work as well, but if you can find a little bit of room so that if you had your hands in front of you, you're not tickling your next door neighbour. Is that at all possible? Yeah, awesome. Okay, I want your hands out like this. Can everybody see me okay with that in the background? Yeah? Alright, so your palms are facing in, your thumbs are facing out. I now want you to turn your palms facing down, so your thumbs are facing in. Now turn your hand so that your thumbs are now facing down. I want you to take your left hand, put it over the top of your right hand and clasp your fingers. For those of you who don't know your lefts and rights, all I've asked you to do is just put your left hand over the top of your right, okay? So we're clasping fingers. From the side, I now want you to point your fingers. This is what it looks like from the side, by the way. Point your fingers, choose somebody to shoot at, and twist and shoot your next door neighbour like a pew 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 pew. Pew pew. Okay, you can now sit down. Untwist. Bring back the ice creams. Still trying to figure it out in the front.
I didn't get to do it when everybody else was doing.
Oh, that's when you stop filming, you see. So I don't do a magic trick at the beginning in order to make you feel silly, although kind of. I do it because when you know how the brain works, you too can use it to your advantage to trick what you perceive. You see, I know what your brain will pay attention to and what it will not pay attention to. Case in point, put up your hands the moment you can read this. Okay, all right. That one's actually not too hard, right? How about this one? Actually, that's the fastest that I've ever had an audience put up their hands, right? This message says, prove how our mind can do amazing things, right? Your brain takes away the chaos every single time and gives you back normality based on your past experience, your training, etc. We know that. Put your hand up as soon as you can tell me what the animal is. A monkey, right. So your brain also fills in dots and gives you a picture based on past experience and your training in the past, right? Now imagine yourself in the woods, dark night, stormy, you're on your own, you're in a new cabin, you're watching a horror movie. Now what is your brain going to do? It's going to reach for a past experience that it thinks that you deserve in that moment, right? Whether you deserve it or whether you don't deserve it. Your brain doesn't understand the difference between reality and what's fake. Therefore, reverse that up, the opposite is, of course, true. We can trick our brains into thinking that everything is fine. Therefore, keeping our engines of hormones and chemicals going in the wake of a storm. Make sense? And that's what we want to get to. So, if we are anxious, we shouldn't be getting into a car after a really hard day at work, turning on the music onto hard rock music and then like speeding down the highway, should we? No. If we're depressed, we've just broken up with somebody, we shouldn't be turning on sad songs and listening to them over and over until we're really sufficiently depressed, should we? But we do, don't we? It's human nature, isn't it? We should be working within the confines of our brain and not over pushing it towards that point of stress and chaos and burnout. When we know how our brain works, we have choices to make. Now, there is actually a reason why stress and burnout is actually on the rise. And I'm here to tell you why. Thankfully, here's your brain in numbers. We have between 65 and 80,000 thoughts in any given day, right? 90% of those are actually your subconscious and unconscious thoughts. We know this. That actually only leaves you 10% of your working thoughts within your conscious control. Now that's 7,000 thoughts a day. That's different thoughts to those that are yesterday. So the rest of the thoughts that you have are actually repetitive, they're habitual, they get you through your day, they get you to and from work, and when you're doing your work, you're not even thinking about it, it's habitual nature, right? So you have 7,000 thoughts a day that are unique. Now, in 1952, the average working man was estimated to have or process 2 newspapers worth of data in any given day. 1952, 2 newspapers worth of data. 2018, can anybody estimate as to how many newspapers we're processing on any given day?
20.
Huh?
100.
176. Yeah? 176 newspapers worth of data using the same 7,000 unique thoughts that your parents and grandparents used to get through each and every day. So if your grandma sits next to you and says, "It was just as stressful in my day," actually, yeah. Add to that, the very technology that's actually supposed to make your life easier is turning you on 24 hours a day. It's beeping, it's moaning at you, telling you you're late, telling you of all of the other tasks that you haven't yet got to, isn't it? 24 hours a day. Add to that also the fact that our children's education in New Zealand and Australia are moving further and further away from allowing the teenage brain to develop at natural rhythms. And suddenly we've got kids that are moving into adolescence and moving into adulthood that don't actually have the chemical resources in their brain in order to cope with the constant stresses of the world. Their brains are being primed differently. And so teenage suicide is also on the rise. And so it's a massive epidemic that we're trying to solve in schools now, trying to bring them back to the whole 80 minutes on and 20 minutes of play again, which is the way that your brain actually wants to work. It wants to have a rest every 20 minutes. It wants to do something completely different every 80 minutes, sorry, for 20 minutes, yeah? So maybe what we can do is we can actually grab some of that subconscious thoughts and take them over to kind of bump up our 7,000. And of course, that's what mindfulness is. So if you've been learning mindfulness and meditation, that's exactly what we're trying to aim to achieve, is to actually tap in to that subconscious, right? Now here's the problem. In my day, that's me on the right, by the way. In my day, my phone beeps, as I said, every 12 seconds. I get 380 emails on minimum every single day telling me of other things that I am actually late to do. I work from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. at least every single day. I hardly ever have time to go to the toilet, let alone have a lunch break. When on earth am I going to have time in my day in order to sit there for a minimum of 12 minutes and practice meditation? Are you with me? This is the state and the nature of today's environment, right? But the good news is, if we know the brain can function if its neurochemicals are strong, you know, some days you just feel like you're just empowered and that you can do anything no matter what life throws at you, and then there's other days that you feel a little bit rattled even with the smallest of things. It's because of your neurochemicals and it's because of the hormones that are racing through you at that particular time. Right? So the more we strengthen one area of the brain, the faster that part of the brain will be to respond in times of stress. Think of it like an overgrown pathway through a grassy field. The more we walk one distance, the easier that pathway becomes. Yeah. So sometimes the answer is simply just to start strengthening up the other pathways again, to opening up other ways of doing things. Now, if I was to tell a Wonder Woman to suddenly go sit on the beach, her brain is already primed to expect experience. It's expecting the hippocampus to be flooding her brain with adrenaline, norepinephrine. It's expecting to solve problems. It's expecting to have something to do. So if you make her sit on a beach, when her family are like, "Yay, let's get a suntan," and she's like, "Where's the next problem to solve? This is driving me crazy," her brain goes into a hyperkinetic, chaotic disorder. Essentially, the hippocampus shuts down the stress hormone cortisol, which has been masking the lowered immunity. Once you turn off the cortisol tap, there's, you know, all the other functions underneath suddenly are at risk of the local virus, the local flu, and I'm the person who will end up spending 7 days at a resort in bed whilst my kids come bounding in the room going, "Mum, this is the best holiday ever, we wish you were out there with me." So my answer to that is if you are one of these people who always seems to get colds and flus when you go on holiday, actually take some problems to solve. All your brain is craving is a little bit of achievement. And just prime your partners to know that that's what you're going to be doing. You know, while they're in the pool swimming around, just, I don't know, get online and just do like 1 hour of work a day, or, I don't know, do some crosswords or whatever floats your boat. I don't know. Anyway. So what I was taught in university neuroscience all those years ago was, of course, what we all heard. The human brain only uses 10% of its functionality. Where's the rest, we used to say. But that was based on the fact that we knew that the grey matter was actually just made up of glial cells. They were just called padding. Just padding, that's all it was. Just soft tissue that was just supporting those other functional areas. But what we now know, and in 2012 they rewrote those university neuroscience textbooks, thank goodness, we now know that actually that padding form the most intricate superhuman highways of communication between those functional areas, right? And if any part of those superhuman highways are damaged, they shut down certain functional areas altogether, right? Now, with stress comes atrophy. This particular PET scan is from somebody who's had chronic stress for only 18 months. Okay, so your brain starts becoming atrophic because of the chronic stress. We might be out there like Wonder Woman doing this and all the rest of it, but the brain itself is really struggling underneath. Good news is we can reverse that. Gone are the days where we actually used to think that once you are at a certain age, the age was 27, that's it. The brain no longer develops after that and everything starts to die. It's actually now reversed. We know that if you learn a new fact, a new skill at any time in your life that goes against your normal training, then it will create a new pathway. The hippocampus will start flooding you with new molecular cell structures. So, with my father who started having Alzheimer's, instead of telling him to do crosswords, which he's done for his entire life, told him to go out and learn how to play piano, right? Something completely different. So you can reverse the effects of stress. Yay! I hear you all say. So I didn't burn out because I was too busy. I didn't burn out because I was stressed, because I still had passion for my job, right? I burnt out because I had literally neglected the rest of the functional areas within my brain. So my whole internal chemistry was just going out of nuts. So what is the answer? We're going to race through it pretty quickly today. Hope you guys are listening. That's all good. Number 1, retrain the brain. So this is a really simple one, right? There was a study done in the University of New South Wales in 2012 where they took a group of aggressive subjects, specifically grumpy old men, and they asked them to use their less dominant hand for a period of only 2 weeks. That's only 14 days. To open doors, to do mundane functions such as drinking, brushing their teeth, putting on zippers, whatever it was that they would normally use their dominant hand for, they used their less dominant hand. Now, after 2 weeks, they went back in and they had the SPECT diagrams done on their brains again, and functional areas that actually looked dead on an EEG earlier had completely energized. Sorry, can't remember the word. Anyway, so they were literally lighting back up again. So only 2 weeks of using their opposite hand, they had re-energized and created those pathways again, giving them access to areas of the brain that allowed them to pre-qualify their outbursts, meaning grumpy old men no more. And yes, this does work with females as well. So effectively what this is we all know what brain gym is. And we're teaching it in our schools, right? Where we use the opposite side of our bodies in order to retrain whole areas of our brain. Now, brain gym, we'll go back one. Brain gym is essentially your brain is cut down in halves. If I use my right hand, it's my left side of the brain that actually does that motor movement. If it's my left hand, then it's my right side. The moment my left hand comes across the midline of my body, it's both sides of the brain that are now actively involved. We're engaging whole brain, and that's all we want to do. All we want to do is get back to whole brain. So here are some brain gym activities that are really simple. And if you are, if you have an elderly parent or somebody who is wheelchair bound, just get them to get pens and do mirror drawing. I get my kids, you know, if we're stuck in that holiday park with nothing to do, we have games doing mirror drawing as to who can do it the fastest, and you can make up some really cool things. Yeah. So number 2, posture. So we all knew, you know, Anthony Robbins has been espousing this for 21 years. Stand there and it builds testosterone, gives you confidence, wah, yeah? But it wasn't until about 4 years ago that we actually realised that when you build testosterone by 20%, it decreases cortisol by 25%. Cortisol being your stress hormone. So that's a new finding, and that's pretty exciting to me. So we're now getting people to walk around their office blocks for 2 minutes every day doing this. Even the woman. It's fascinating. Hey. So just find yourself a power pose. And if you're really struggling during the day, I'll come back to this one a little bit further on, but if you are struggling during the day, how you treat your posture makes that awful big difference. And I know with a lot of you, you'll be like this, yeah? Just be conscious about pulling your shoulders back. Makes a huge difference internally. Everybody put a huge audacious smile on your face like this. Now look at the person next to you. Now that is the smile of a crazed psychopath. But it's also a smile that can save your life. We have more muscles in the human face than any other area of the body, right? 43 to be precise. Many of those are primed to create serotonin, oxytocin and dopamine just through the art of smiling. Now those 3 hormones are of course the happy hormones. Even if you are really struggling in the day, and this is me when I was at my worst part of burnout, which means I became maniacal, I had absolutely mechanical, I had absolutely no emotion left at all. Couldn't turn it on. You'd put me in front of a comedy and I would not be able to laugh. Couldn't do it. I had to do this all day. I'm faking until my brain realizes that it's a natural thing to do. Every time I smiled, I was telling my tap for oxytocin, dopamine and serotonin to turn back on. After 2 weeks, it became natural. But that was probably the biggest thing that I did on my recovery. It looked crazy. But the other part of that is obviously, oh there you go, just going a bit low. Whenever you smile, if you're experiencing pain, do you guys realise that you can withstand pain for double the length of time if you smile? So, you know, if you're going to grimace, try to smile instead. Imagine that when you're getting an injection. Yeah. So, amazing stuff. And also, every time you laugh and you smile, it actually increases the immunoglobulin and the salivary defense mechanisms within your mouth, meaning that you're less susceptible to all of the flus and colds naturally, right? So my kids, not even allowed in the door. I'm a single mum, so I half share with my my ex-partner, and every time my kids come home and they even have the slightest tickle, I'm like, tickle monsters, come on, let's laugh it out. Let's increase those salivary defense mechanisms, and we never have colds and flus in our houses. Anyway, that's just me. It's just I'm the crazy mum. Just constantly laughing. If you wanted to take a photo of that to remember, you're most welcome. But anyway. Okay. So number 4 is that we spend 90% of our working day in a state of beta and gamma brainwave state. So what this means is, you know, it's alpha state when you're in a meditative state. Alpha state is when your brainwave is sort of 7 kilohertz per second, it's really relaxed, and studies have shown at Stanford University that we're actually more primed to learn in that state. We're more primed to become creative and think outside the square in the alpha state. If we spend 90% of our day in beta and gamma, then we're not actually able to get to areas of our brain that allow us to be more creative, right? So, how do we get into alpha state? Just get out into nature. It's incredible. That same study at Stanford University showed that the simple nature of just standing in trees with the wind took only 6 seconds to take really tired, very stressed students and turn them into alpha state. It's literally a stress kill switch. And yet we're all in concrete jungles a lot of the time, right? But there's something in that whole Japanese zen of having water running in the background. It's water, it's trees, and it's grass. Simple, easy, fun. By the way, the other thing that you can do, sing. I know. So, when you sing, you actually can't be stressed at the same time. The two are on physically different areas of the brain, so the two cannot happen at the same time. So, not only that, I know, crazy. Not only that, but 1/3 of your brain is dedicated to your sensory motor cortex, that is dedicated to your tongue, oral cavity, your lips, and what else did I say? I can't remember. But anyway, it's the oral emissions. It's not the words themselves. It's the oral vibration and emissions that come through your voice that actually have been shown to vibrate DNA and change your very genetic structure. Some of you may have actually heard of Dr. Emoto, or at the moment it's Bruce Lipton, and who's the other one? Dr. Brian, not Brian Weiss. Anyway, it's all about using vibration and sound therapy in order to change how we feel. So you might have heard of vibration therapy or sound therapy, but sometimes it's just, less expensive, more cost efficient in order just to sing in the shower. And by the way, yeah, we'll get to that a little bit later on. So number 5 is beating the brain fog. So we've all had one of those moments, right, where you get up from whatever it is that you're doing and you have this very important idea in your head and you walk halfway along the room and then it's and we turn around and we look back at the seat that we came from, hoping that something will jump back into your brain, but it never does. And so we walk back to that seat and pretend like we just felt like getting up. Yeah, that's brain fog. Literally, it's a case of your brain having too much going on and it's gone into slush. And we know that 5 things actually cause brain fog outside of medications and illness. And those 5 things are up there on the screen, so it's hydration, oxygen, nutrition, stress and sleep. We're dealing with stress throughout the rest of the speech, so we're just going to focus on 2 of them just here very quickly. Number 1 is that your brain is made up of 70% water, right? Even a 2% drop in your hydration levels can impact your attention, your cognitive attention, cognitive performance. A study was done at King's University in London where they actually took a group of students and they got them to sweat profusely, either through running or by putting them into a sweat tank, what are they called, saunas, for 90 minutes. And what happened was that the brain itself shrunk away from the physical skull, mimicking the SPEC diagram that I showed you before, mimicking 18 months of chronic stress. And that was only 90 minutes of chronic sweating, high heat, reduced the size of those superhighways again. So in today's environment where our kids are reaching for 5 Red Bulls a day and it's dehydrating them, imagine what it's doing to their brain. Like, I'm not a big proponent about anti-sugar, but I'm definitely a big proponent about dehydration through the foods that we eat and the drinks that we're giving our kids. I had a birthday party last weekend, by the way, where I had 11-year-olds, and one of them came up to me at 8 o'clock the next morning and goes, "Oh, you've got an espresso machine, can I have a coffee?" I have a coffee every morning. Not in my house, right? Wrong mum. So you're probably sitting there going, what on earth is going on with that picture? Yeah, it's not me picking my nose. Right, can I get you all just quickly to just take a huge breath in like this? And then out. And then one more time. And out. Alright. Do you feel a bit energized? Your brain is an oxygen hog. We forget to breathe. We literally forget to breathe. It takes over 20% of all the oxygen that comes in. So every now and again just stop and actually give your brain the oxygen that it needs in order to beat that brain fog and in order to survive. Not only that, can I actually ask you all to block your right, I'm not going to trick you this time around, this is your right. Block your right nostril and breathe in through the left nostril. Just slow, 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 and slow out. Just do it once and then release. Now here's the interesting fact of that one, and that was what that's supposed to be looking like, not me picking my nose. Right? I'm not the artist. Anyway. In that moment, two things happened. So blocking your left nostril is the fastest way to kill the sympathetic nervous system. Ta-da. The reason for that is because you are activating the oxygen that goes into the right side of your brain. Right, so what you're doing is you're actually activating your parasympathetic nervous system in that moment. So lots and lots of studies into the fact that we need to be, you know, when you're doing yoga, by the way, and you're doing the nasal breathing, there's a reason why we do nasal breathing. And it's because it's the fastest parallel into your brain. Yeah. So if anything else, walk around like this, blocking the left, sorry, blocking the right nose. I thought you were doing the opposite way. Sorry. I thought you were doing the opposite way. No, I did.
We did it the right way, you just did the wrong way out.
Thank you. Thank you. So breathing through your left nostril, left nasal breathing, fastest kill switch to cortisol. The fastest. Within 2 seconds. Okay? So if there's nothing else that you leave here with today, it is simply that. Cool. By the way, if anybody wants to know, you know how I said that yes, there's kind of like a left brain, right brain thing. You're either one or you're the other. Well, your brain, like I said, it wants to switch sides every 80 minutes for a 20-minute breather, right? So you can actually tell at what point of the day, what side of the brain your brain is activated. Would you like to know how? Right, just take a nice breath in and if you can, just concentrate on which one of your nostrils is actually breathing easier. Now, if you cannot tell, block one of the nostrils, breathe in, and then try it with the other side. Breathe in. Yeah. Whichever one is easier, it's actually the same side that is actively active at that time because of the constriction in the blood vessels. Yeah. There we go. So number 8, balancing your neurochemicals. So like I said, I didn't burn out because I was stressed. I burnt out because my neurochemicals were completely out of whack. My hippocampus had gone into a massive flux and all of my hormones and all my chemicals were like bleh. There was no oxytocin, there was no serotonin left. I couldn't sleep. I wasn't getting the melatonin, so I wasn't getting the serotonin. It's a cocktail, right? So it pains me that we get people to constantly go to the chemist in order to get melatonin, to get, sleeping tablets, because we can actually turn on all of these neurochemicals the natural way. I could spend 4 hours teaching you all about the natural ways on how to get these 5 miracles hormones back into your system again. But what I do want to focus on today is just oxytocin. So in 2016, the study came where they did where they collated 148 different studies from around the world that looked into 300,000 patients, and they found that loneliness, severe loneliness, was more fatal than smoking and double the amount of fatality to obesity. Imagine all those elderly people who are lacking in oxytocin, right? And so the same study actually found that just putting these people into a social network where they started making new friends, such as these ones, increased your longevity statistic by about 50%. Just because of oxytocin. Simplicity. We're like geese. Geese never fly alone. They fly 70% faster in a pack. We're the same. We should be going out there and actually being around others. Yeah. So some of the other natural ways that you can build oxytocin is by simply touching somebody and by simply giving somebody a hug. It's weird in my workplace. I actually work with 970 people, but all of them know I'm a hugger.